before. I'm glad you can hear us. So like I said, we'll just get started right away. If you have questions, just start asking them, and we can just get them queued up for when they hang out after they're done introducing themselves. Okay? So take it away, Brian.
Cool. Hey guys. So welcome. My name is Brian Kirk. I graduated from Penn State in 2009 with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Then I joined the Navy and I went to OCS and ended up in Pearl Harbor. I was on the USS Louisville, a fast attack submarine, did one deployment with her, one shipyard period, and then got out from the boat and came straight to business school. So yeah, Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. How are you guys doing? My name's Sam Perlick. I am an Army infantry officer. I'm actually still on active duty, bit of a unique situation for business school. I'm here on a 2-year educational hiatus, basically, en route to a teaching assignment at West Point. Be there for a couple of years and then back to the operational force. But all of us can comment, obviously, on kind of the non-business background. But if you've got specific questions pertaining to Army or anything else like that, I'm your man. Kellen?
All right, thanks a lot. I'm Kellen Mollahan. I was a pilot in the Marine Corps, graduated Naval Academy in 2005, studied political science, and then I just got out of the Marines in March after my aviation commitment ended.
Right on. So I figure what we'll do, guys, is we'll kind of run through why we chose Sloan, and then dive a little bit into like what our first year is like as far as classes, electives, tracks that you can do, recruiting events, whatever, and then give you a little bit of application advice, and then just open it up to whatever questions you guys have. If that's not what you guys want, if you have more pointed questions, just kind of type it in, and Jeff will redirect us, and we can go through something that's more relevant for you. But really, the biggest thing of why I chose Sloan.
I welcome you all. Thank you for coming. My name is Jeff Carboni. I'm from the admissions office, and I'm joined by 3 of our current Veterans Club members. And then we'll let you guys take it away, introduce yourself, give some backstory, and then we'll open it up to questions. Thank you, Charlie and Michael, everyone, for responding to my questions before. I'm glad you can hear us. So, like I said, we'll just get started right away. If you have questions, just start asking them, and we can just get them queued up for when they hang out after they're done introducing themselves. Okay? So take it away, Brian.
Cool. Hey guys. So welcome. My name is Brian Kirk. I graduated from Penn State in 2009 with a bachelor's in mechanical engineering. Then I joined the Navy and I went to OCS and ended up in Pearl Harbor. I was on the USS Louisville, a fast attack submarine, did one deployment with her, one shipyard period, and then got out from the boat and came straight to business school. So yeah, Sam, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. How are you guys doing? My name's Sam Perlick. I am an Army infantry officer. I'm actually still on active duty, bit of a unique situation for business school. I'm here on a 2-year educational hiatus, basically, en route to a teaching assignment at West Point. Be there for a couple of years and then back to the operational force. But all of us can comment, obviously, on kind of the non-business background. But if you've got specific questions pertaining to Army or anything else like that, I'm your man. Kellen?
All right, thanks a lot. I'm Kellen Mollahan. I was a pilot in the Marine Corps, graduated Naval Academy in 2005, studied political science, and then I just got out of the Marines in March after my aviation commitment ended.
Right on. So I figure what we'll do, guys, is we'll kind of run through why we chose Sloan, and then dive a little bit into like what our first year is like as far as classes, electives, tracks that you can do, recruiting events, whatever, and then give you a little bit of application advice, and then just open it up to whatever questions you guys have. If that's not what you guys want, if you have more pointed questions, just kind of type it in, and Jeff will redirect us, and we can go through something that's more relevant for you. But really, the biggest thing of why I chose Sloan, or one of the biggest draws for me, was that the school wasn't necessarily looking for us to have a clear goal for our career in mind. So, I mean, transitioning out of the Navy, I didn't even know what was in the real world necessarily in terms of jobs or where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, etc. And Sloan's application, their entire process, they never ask you to say, hey, what is your 5-year plan? What's your 10-year plan? And it was the only application I saw that did that, and it was definitely a big break point. And the whole thing at Sloan is all about kind of discovering what you want to do, and everybody realizes that you might change your career aspirations a couple times. So I thought that was pretty cool. Sam, you're up.
All right, so 2 primary things that influenced my decision to come to Sloan. I would say one and probably foremost was the diverse pedagogy. We do a combination in the core semester of lectures, small group projects, experiential learning type stuff. We do the case method. And so the diversity of that pedagogy really appealed to me. There are a lot of schools that have a much less diverse pedagogy, like 100% case method, which is great for a lot of people, and I have really enjoyed the cases that we've done, but I've also found that given my military background and kind of lack of business acumen, being able to sit through some lectures prior to trying to wade through a 30-page case and then do some like practical applications like financial accounting, for example. Kind of building the baseline with the lecture before that, I thought would be tremendously helpful, and now that I'm going through this semester, I'm finding that it absolutely is. So the diverse pedagogy was a huge draw. The second big thing that I was attracted to Sloan for was the collaborative environment. I think you hear that in a lot of business schools, a lot of business programs kind of tout, they're like, oh yeah, everybody works together here. But when I visited Sloan, when I talked to vets, when I talked to other students, that was something that they just kept reiterating and came up with over and over and over. Everyone has everybody else's back. Professors are super accessible. Teaching assistants will meet you early in the morning or late at night if you're not picking up on something. People are happy to field phone calls on homeworks you're not being able to wrap your head around. So the collaborative environment here is very, very real. And especially for someone, like I said, coming from a non-business background, I've had a lot of questions, particularly on some of the more quant-heavy core classes, and that was a tremendous draw to me. And again, I thought it was that way when I was in the application process, and being here, I found that it's even more collaborative than I thought it would be. So those, I would say, are my kind of top 2 reasons why I chose Sloan. Kellen?
Yeah, I agree completely with Sam. Additionally, I'd say MIT, the school as a whole, has their motto, mind in hand. So as you guys probably seen on the MIT website, they talk a great deal about action learning. So not only will we learn via the case method, or as Sam mentioned, we'll actually get in and learn the quantitative side. I just learned how to price an option, which I never thought I'd know how to do. But then they have a bunch of collaborative exercises for you to get together with teams and practice what you just learned using your own creativity and learning from your other teammates to solve particular problems. And so the mind in hand aspect was really appealing. I also initially chose MIT because I was very interested in technology entrepreneurship, which MIT is the place to do that. Since then, I've actually switched to a focus in finance, which luckily MIT is also the place to do that. So I'm really diving into the quantitative side because I know that's a weakness of mine, and MIT is the perfect place to provide that support system for me to go into something completely new. So that's it for me.
Yeah, so kind of talking to what Sam and Kellen just both mentioned about what we call action learning. So I had a really hard time kind of gathering what action learning was from the website and people that I talked to beforehand. But really, action learning is getting out of the classroom, involving yourselves with local businesses, clients, whatever, and learning business by actually doing it. So right now, I'm in 2 projects. I'm working right now with Smutty Nose Brewery out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They just went through a facility shift, so they went from a very old facility to state-of-the-art, brand new, tripled their capacity, and we're taking a look at how that's impacting the culture and structure of their business and what it means for them in terms of growth. So that's a really interesting project, and that one was literally the professor said, hey, I want you to look at cultural structure and what's the other ones, guys? I'm missing a lens. political, there we go. Political, cultural, and structure lenses, and find a company and go out and analyze it, talk to people. So that was just a really cool experience to have to reach out to. I mean, I reached out to their CEO on Facebook to try to get an interview with someone, and it ended up working out really well. My other project I'm doing is part of the enterprise management track. I'm working with Nike out in Portland, Oregon, and we are taking a look at their supply chain system and specifically their replenishment system, and how that's stacking up against their major competitors and what's working about it and really what's not working about it. How is that system hindering their operations and how can they make it better? So two really cool projects that were started right off the bat, and it's kind of trial by fire, which is exactly the kind of exposure that I wanted coming out of the Navy, just to really learn, okay, what is business? So with that, so those are our action learning projects right now. And I'm sure the other guys can talk to their experiences too. Talking a little bit about like the core semester. So your first semester, you're with your cohort that we call an ocean, and it's about 70 people. You've got 6 courses that you'll take. So you'll take organizational processes, communications, accounting, economics, and data management and decisions. Am I forgetting one, guys? Am I good?
Plus an elective if you opted for that.
Plus an elective, yeah. So Sam and I are in strategy right now, which is a great class. And then you also get paired up with a small team, so your core team, and that's 6 to 7 people who you become intimately familiar with and do all your group projects and group cases and comm labs with, and it's been a really wonderful collaborative experience, I think. And talking to what Sam was just saying about, he came here for the collaboration. I expected that the business world was going to be a very independent thing, that I was going to go out on my own and it was going to be every man for themselves. And Sloan is exactly the opposite. It is the closest to the brotherhood of my submarine that I could ever have imagined I would find. So in that sense, it's really cool. And one of my classmates remarked the other day that in the orientation weeks, so the first and second week of class, really, Sloan somehow manages to tear down all the bad habits that corporations and the corporate world have put on people, and everybody just becomes this one big happy family. So it is a really neat experience.
I'll echo and kind of follow up on another thing that Brian touched on a little bit, which is kind of exposure to how we learn about business. Obviously, the core semester is a tremendous part of that. Another huge part of it is the resources available for students here. There are, I think, like over 60 clubs. You guys back me up on that. I think that number's been thrown around. And among those are professional interest clubs. So not only people that came from that industry or want to go back to it, but people who are just interested in learning about it, myself included. So I can't tell you how many company presentations or question and answer sessions or networking type events I've attended where I walked away just with my mind blown, or like a light bulb has gone off, just from like talking to someone that works in an industry over beer, being like, oh, so that's why that works that way. And so that's a huge part of not only the clubs, but also like our career development office. They sponsor a bunch of events and that kind of thing. And Brian also kind of alluded to this earlier. There's no stigma in changing industries or function as a Sloan MBA, and there are a lot of people doing it. So taking advantage of those club networking events, going to CDO sessions and stuff like that, it really gives the opportunity to not only learn and really broaden your scope, but also think about what you want to do beyond your MBA. And like I said, I'm not even actually looking for a job, but I'm learning a tremendous amount about industry. And like I can read the paper, like the business section of the paper now, and it means infinitely more to me than it ever did. So you guys that may or may not be kind of intimidated coming from a non-business background, which I absolutely was, it's really not something you have to worry about just because the resources available.
And just let me add one thing too. we don't know how familiar people watching this are with the curriculum. There is only a one-semester core. That one semester gives you the toolkit that you'll need for the rest of the 3 semesters. Like Brian mentioned, we don't ask about your future goals. It's good to have an idea of something you might want to do, things you want to get involved in when you come to Sloan, but you'll have your 2 years to really mold that into whatever it is you want it to be. There are 3 tracks. Brian did mention that enterprise management track that he's a part of, but there's also a finance track and an entrepreneurship track. Entrepreneurship innovation. So there's 3 tracks that you can choose from. You do not have to choose a track if you don't want to. So it's just a way for you to be with like-minded people and sort of give you a path after the core. Of course, it's a take and options there. If you don't like having 3 semesters of immense options, you can tailor it to a track if you want. And there's also 2 certificates, a sustainability certificate and a healthcare certificate that you can choose to take and couple with a track if you'd like, or just do them separate of tracks. You guys want to talk about what's next on your list?
Yeah, so kind of going into the admissions cycle, I don't know where you guys are at in admissions, whether you're prepping for your interview or still writing your essays, prepping for second round applications. A couple things I've got written here that I definitely wanted to cover for you. I think that the optional essay should not be optional. I did mine, and I think that was really the kicker that put my application over the edge, where the first 2 questions, because there were only 2 essays, the first 2 questions in our group of essays were focused around who I am as a professional, and I realized that my application didn't really cover anything about who I was as a person. And I mean, looking now what I know about who Sloan is and Sloan values, that is absolutely valued even more than who you are as a professional. So although your professional accomplishments are great, and you definitely need to use that to your advantage, definitely be genuine and talk about who you are as a person. Another great piece of advice that I was given in my application cycle, actually from a vet at Wharton, was that you got to keep in mind that, and Jeff, you can cut me off if this is incorrect or whatever, but in general, you're competing against other veterans, right? So each business school is going to take a certain percentage of veterans that is predetermined by admissions or subjective to admissions. But really, you need to make yourself look better in that application cycle than other veterans, and it's kind of difficult to say how you want to do that. But it was just a different way of looking at it, that you're not necessarily competing against all 100,000 people or whoever are applying to Sloan. A certain portion of the class will be vets, so you need to make yourself look.
So, I will interrupt you there.
Feel free to yell at me for that one.
You are 100% wrong. I don't know how other schools do it. I don't know how other schools do it, but I can tell you, having worked at Sloan in the admissions process for a long time now, a few years at least, we don't separate by industry, by function, by anything. We read applications. They're divvied up to us. They could be someone from one industry to the next. They're not coupled together at all. We invite people to interview, and then same thing with the interviews. They just go. If you look at the number of vets that are in each year's class, if you look at the past 10 years, there's not one consistent, like, it's going to be about X amount each year. It really has been ebbs and flows. So we're looking for the best and the brightest, and we're just looking for that all in anyone, from any background. So just want to say.
All right, well,
sorry.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, Sam or Kellen, you guys want to hop in with anything for admissions?
Yeah, absolutely. Regarding the optional essay, I absolutely echo what Brian said. I think, I don't know, and again, Jeff, you can weigh in on this. A lot of people, I think, are inclined to try to, like, over-civilianize their resume. And I really was inclined to do that. I was like, oh, man, company commander. Like, no one knows what that means. And so, like, between a little tweak in your resume and the optional essay, you can really convey a lot of stuff that you wouldn't otherwise have room for in your essays. You know, whereas, like, on the one hand, you could spend an entire paragraph trying to explain, like, oh, I was a company commander of an airborne rifle company, garrison, and then combat, and, like, try to explain what that means. All you're doing is taking away from, like, your space and your word count in your essay, whereas Again, kind of like capturing some of that in the resume and then having a few clarification points on the optional essay was, I thought, a useful way to convey that. And actually, during my interviewer commented, she said, yeah, you did a really nice job of kind of balancing the military jargon from your resume with some context and explanation in your essays that help the admissions committee kind of see your whole story. So that's one comment I have. Jeff, do you agree with that? Or?
Yeah, no, so the optional, so you both mentioned the optional essay, and it is just that, it is optional. There are people that are admitted that don't do it. There are people that do it. It's really, I find it sort of a lost opportunity if you choose not to do it. It is a great way for you to let us know who you are, what your interests are outside of your current role, what your passions are, whatever you want to do. It's your opportunity to really let the admissions committee know a bit more about you. And like you said, you know, we may not know everything from your resume or what you do, or we may not understand what something means, but if there's something that we don't understand, we'll probably just ask one of the vets what it is that if it's really specific. So that said, I'll just give you one more piece of admissions advice too. We have a competency-based model when we're reviewing applications and when we're doing the interviews. And so we're looking at a couple buckets, and one of those buckets are your personal attributes. And those are things like your leadership, your teamwork, creativity, all those types of soft skills that we're trying to understand how you act as people. Obviously, veterans, you guys are in stressful situations. You work well in teams. You're a solid bunch of people, and you're gaining a lot of skills in whatever you're doing. But in those essays, that's the reason our application is focused on the past. We're looking at your past 3 years as a predictor of your future success. We're not going to waste our time asking you what you want to do in your future and your future goals, because you'll never know if that's going to come true. So we're going to focus our efforts on what things that have actually happened, so we can we judge you based on that. So be succinct and answer the questions we ask and be to the point. You don't need to fluff it up and make it more verbose and tell us your future dreams of leading the free world. Whatever it is, it's fine. A lot of people have a hard time not letting us know what their end goal is, and that's fine if you want to. Just keep it short and stick to the facts. Forget about the hypotheticals and the lessons learned. We want to know what you've actually done and accomplished to help us decide if you're right for the community. And that's the same thing for the interview. If you receive an interview, we review your application before the interview. We may focus on things that you wrote about, or we may take it a totally different direction. We're just going to look for areas that we didn't learn a lot about you, whether it's more of the leadership of the teamwork or whatever piece of it. So.
I'll just echo what Sam said with regard to the essays. I came up with an overall theme that I wanted to convey, and so I used the essays as well as the optional essay to convey different aspects of that theme to support my overall message. So I did use the optional essay, and I found it very helpful to, at least in my mind, ensure that I'm conveying the whole picture to the admissions committee. As for the resumes, a lot of vets, talking to other vets, and even for myself, veterans tend in one way to underrepresent their accomplishments or think that what we do is just kind of daily business. Really embrace what you all have done, the leadership experiences you've had, and then find a clear, succinct way to convey that. And whenever possible, try and give numbers and metrics to help the admissions committee, when they're reading your resume, actually understand the impact that you had on your organization.
Yeah, so kind of talking off of that, Kellen kind of alluded to it, but really being able to talk through your story. So before my interviews, and actually I did this part of my essay writing process, I sat down with my wife, and like we were just sitting on the couch talking through, okay, how can I take my story and present it in a fashion that people are going to understand it? It was highly technical, highly stressful. How can I make that come out and really paint the picture of what I have done and what I've accomplished? And it was not a trivial notion, and like to some extent I'm still working on the ability to tell that story well. And now I have to do it for job interviews too. But definitely take your time and give it some serious thought. I would recommend talking through it with someone that knows you, knows what you've been through, and can really make sense of it and offer direct, unbiased feedback to how you're telling your story. There's a couple websites, I can't remember what they are, that had like potential interview questions on, and I mean they're great places to start just for getting you thinking about how to tell your story and really what you want to say.
And in the interview, it is just that. It's your story. We're not trying to trick you. We're not trying to throw curveball questions at you. We're just trying to learn about you. So the stories are just about you and how you acted in various situations. So keep that in mind. With that, do you guys mind if we switch to taking a couple questions? And those viewers, please just keep asking questions. The more questions there are, the easier it will flow. And then the chat's supposed to go till 9, but we can also end early. But if you have questions, don't be shy. Please ask them. And the first question that was actually the first question up here was directed to Brian. You don't have to direct questions to someone. If you want to, that's fine. So Brian, as a mechanical engineer, why didn't you do the LGO program?
So I looked at the LGO program. To be honest, a good portion of why I didn't do it was solely based off of the timing of me leaving the Navy. So the LGO program started in, I think it was late May or early June. My contract wasn't up until the end of August. So I was planning on taking 28 days of terminal leave at the end, but I was not willing to essentially sacrifice 90 days of leave or try to escalate my contract forward or resign earlier in order to do LGO. But that was predominantly the reason why I didn't pursue that.
Great, yeah. So the LGO program, it's a 2-year program. It does start in June and goes to June. So you're right there. Another question, how is it having a family while you're at Sloan? I know that some of the vets have kids. I don't know if any of you guys do, but I guess you can answer that. And then also, anyone that has questions, we're happy to give our email addresses out so you can shoot us an email later, and the Veterans Club is great. And if you want to talk to people that have children as well. So, but talk about having families at Sloan?
Yeah, so I can talk to that. I don't have kids yet. My wife is pregnant, so we're happy about that. But my wife is with me here. So she's gotten settled into Cambridge. There is a significant others club, so she was concerned about that. There is a special club specifically for significant others to meet each other, as well as to arrange play dates and all that kind of stuff for those with families. From the other vets who have families, it's really been, from what I understand, they enjoy it quite a bit. You get settled in, you get with your core team. There'll usually be a few people on your ocean, your cohort, who have families that you'll work with childcare and all that kind of stuff with them. And then MIT as a whole offers a lot of services for families. In fact, during Halloween, one of the buildings was all decorated for Halloween, and they had a bunch of kids in there trick-or-treating. So it seems like there's quite a bit of support for people with kids, and for having a spouse. It's been a great experience so far for
her. I'm surprised that you have a spouse. Your room's so sparsely decorated. There's no nice artwork hanging up or anything.
This is our second bedroom / my office, so all the good stuff is in the master bedroom.
Okay, very good. Also, I mean, there's plenty of people that do have kids, whether they're veterans or not, but I know Pat O'Brien and Kevin Flake, they both have started families before and while they're at Sloan, so we can always put you guys in touch with that. Are any of you guys in the joint degree program with Kennedy, with the Kennedy School?
No, I saw that question. Edward, we can put you in touch with somebody that is. One of the Vets Club co-presidents, Kevin Flake, is a blue degree guy at HKS. So Jeff, I'm not terribly sure how we get contact info, but if you give us your contact info, Edward, we can put you in touch with somebody who will.
How about we do this? Kevin Flake, Flake, Flike, at MIT.edu. He's a good guy. He's doing the joint degree at Kennedy right now. He's at Kennedy right now, but still around Sloan's campus often enough. So Kevin Flake, you can find him that way. But also, my email address is the easiest too to give out, jcarbone@mit.edu. If you guys have questions, I can get it to the Vets Club and the various people in it. So how about, so do the Vet Club alumni help out and get students prepared for recruiting and interviews?
Yeah, I'll field that one. So I've been doing a lot of recruiting. I'm trying to take my career more toward management consulting, and a lot of the events, there will be some events that will be specifically geared toward the veterans and veterans only, and other events that are kind of open to everyone, but lots of times you'll find vets there, and usually it's Sloanies that come back to do recruiting. So I went to a McKinsey event last week, and there were two vets there, both Sloanies, and we sat down and had a very blunt talk about what the recruiting process is like, how you're evaluated, how you should answer certain questions. And he definitely gave me way too much information as opposed to like what McKinsey would have preferred. But if you kind of look at the loyalty spectrum, everybody is loyal to Sloan and veterans especially more than they are the firms that they've gone to. So that's definitely been my experience. I was trying to get an alum to come sit in on this chat, but unfortunately he had to work late tonight. But I reached out to him, hadn't met the guy before, and was just like, "Hey, Derek, running this webinar. I'd love it if you'd be willing to participate." And he got back to me right away. He was like, "Absolutely." Spoke to him and was super excited about trying to be here to help recruit you guys and share his experience. It just didn't work out. But that alumni network, especially among the veterans, is incredibly strong.
Yeah, and I'll just add to a related question. The Veterans Club itself doesn't necessarily hold a specific recruiting event. However, the Veterans Club is the conduit through which all companies that are recruiting typically will either go through the Career Development Office, but they'll also reach out to the Veterans Network because veterans in the greater business world are now getting folded into the diversity program for most businesses. So businesses will reach out to the Veterans Club in order to let them know when they're hosting veteran-specific recruiting events. And since I'm pursuing finance, I can tell you there's a lot of veteran recruiting going on there, and similarly as Brian mentioned for consulting.
And as the guys mentioned before, the alumni network at Sloan and at the greater MIT, they're amazing people. And while you're at school, you'll build these amazing bonds. But the alumni network is really incredible. And it's rare that someone doesn't respond to an email, whether you're a prospective student or an admitted student or a current student at MIT. It's really pretty crazy. So another question that came in, I'll read it, and I don't really know what it means, so I'm sure you guys will. But I'm a fast attack guy at Portsmouth Psy or SY right now, like the Louisville was, prepping for my interview. What did you do to portray during yours, and what do you wish you had prepared better for?
Yeah, well, first off, my condolences for being in the shipyard. That was the worst time of my life.
Shipyard, okay, I get it.
That's why a shipyard, Jeff. You got it. During my interview, so like I said, I really concentrated on telling my story, but I focused in on a couple key things. So there was one job that I was thrust into that I wasn't prepared for and had very little mentorship. So how did I build myself and build my credibility with that job? There was one major nuclear evolution that I led and kind of talked about that, and really you kind of got to sell yourself. It's tough to sell yourself when, I mean, we're all pretty humble people generally in the veterans community, and you got to step out of that comfort zone a little bit and say, you know what, like I did this really well and this was the outcome, and be confident in that. But as far as what do I wish that I prepared for better, the Sloan interview, more than the other interviews that I did, caught me off guard with some of the questions, and I can't really get more specific than that because I don't remember the exact questions. But a lot of the other schools, and I interviewed at 3 other schools, were what I would call textbook interview questions, right? So like, what is your biggest weakness? And tell me about a time that you led someone. The Sloan questions were a little more outside the box, and there was one point where my interviewer asked me a very direct question that I had not given any thought to, and it took me aback, and I said, whoa. I've never actually thought about that. Give me a second to collect my thoughts. And she was like, yeah, okay, no problem. And kind of took 5 or 10 seconds to think about, all right, well, what story that I've kind of bucketed off in my mind fits into this, and how can I spin it to really answer the question, keeping like the answering the question part in mind. And I came up with one and I answered it with some poise. But definitely don't feel like you're rushed in an interview. and yeah, aside from that, if anybody wants to talk more specifically, so Brandon, if you want to talk more specifically about submarines and how we leverage our background, I'd be more than happy to talk with you one-on-one.
Okay, so another question, are any of you guys in the Guard or Reserves, and if so, have you run into any problems with your drill periods? And if you're not, can you speak to anyone's experience that was or is?
Yeah, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, Kellen and Brian, I don't think either of you guys are you?
I'm not. The only person I know was Pat.
Yeah. So I was just saying, what I have, and again, I'm in a unique situation. I'm actually still on active duty. I have talked to several guys who are in the Guard and Reserves, and they either have or are running into problems with their drill periods. Like Miles, actually, guys, is supposed to drill this weekend, and for some reason, he's having to miss a couple days of class for that. I met a guy the other night whose name escapes me. Brian and Kelly, you might remember, he's now a Guard or Reserve Recon Marine, and they want to send him to airborne school in January. So he's potentially having to sacrifice the entire month of, a very comprehensive recruiting and interview period for most first years. He's looking at having to choose between that and as well. January is our independent activities period, IAP, lots of low and no credit courses that are kind of the broadening experience at MIT. Anyway, so he's having to choose between doing those things and going to airborne school to kind of satisfy his requirements. So I'm not going to go out on a limb and take a position on the merits of it one way or another, but I'll tell you that I have spoken to 3 or 4 guys who are having trouble with that. So something to consider.
And I'll add as well. I decided not to do reserve or IR or any of that. I more or less wanted to be, well, not more or less, I wanted to be no strings attached. Especially as a pilot, I was concerned about getting called back since that's a more in-demand skill. From fellow pilots at other schools that I know who went into the reserves, there's been good experiences and bad experiences. Some are able to work out a good deal with the reserve unit where they kind of come in, they still have to come in, but they don't do anything. And then some where it is a bit more involved because of that risk. I didn't want to take it. And I know there's a draw as you're getting out thinking about health insurance and all that kind of stuff, which MIT does provide. You have to purchase it, but they do provide a health insurance program. The benefits you get from those extra things of being in the reserve may or may not be worth it. So I've heard mixed stories either way.
Yeah, so I am IR. I still have a year and a half left on my IR contract, and obviously with that, I have no strings attached for now, but you could be called. But I do know that, so Pat O'Brien, who's a second year right now, stayed active reserve for the sole point of getting very cheap benefits, health benefits. So they stayed on TRICARE, and he does his 1 week a month, was it 2 weeks a month, 1 week a year, or whatever? No, that was completely wrong. 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year. There we go. He does that. He doesn't really have a problem, but he was heavily involved in the implementation of the P8, and it was a pretty technical role, and he was kind of one of the pioneer pilots that did it. So they asked him specifically to stay active reserve for that. So he had kind of a good deal worked out with his commanding officer prior to leaving. So if anybody wanted to be put in touch with him, I could absolutely arrange an introduction.
Great. So,
sorry, Jeff, I have one more comment on that. Without getting too philosophical about current political atmosphere and whatnot. In all seriousness, at least from an Army perspective, guys, I mean, these are not the most certain times in U.S. history or military history. I mean, the drawdown is still happening. They're still cutting guys from all 3 components: active, Guard, and reserve. And Guard and reservists are getting activated to bolster deploying forces or to backfill guys on garrison that are deploying. I mean, we had a National Guard unit come in and take over the hospital at Fort Bragg for a while. So, I mean, those guys weren't deployed foreign, to a combat theater, but it's essentially the same thing. I mean, you can't remote into class at Sloan from North Carolina if your unit gets sent down there to run the hospital. So, it's food for thought, I suppose.
So one quick question to answer. Are interview invitations sent out in bulk or on a rotating basis? They're sent out on a rotating basis. Last year we did them in bulk. This year we did them in rotating basis. So they're still going out now. So they started going out maybe 4 weeks ago. Another question. For the interview, the website mentions that we'll most likely not tell an entire story, just specifics of a situation. Did any of you have problems explaining your military experience with background in the interview? Any other suggestions?
I'll take that one and kind of expand on a comment that both Jeff and Brian made earlier. Definitely, and that's one thing that I would rehearse, that I did rehearse before my interview, is, you need to be able to make a clear, concise statement as an answer to an interviewer's question. You don't want to spend 4 minutes explaining what your unit was and how it works. So it's worthwhile to practice like a few quick sentences to give context to really any situation. I know that seems like a weird thing to say, but if you think about a question that you might get asked and you say, okay, well, I'm going to tell this story from when I was company commander or when I was deployed as an XO. Think in your mind how to set the stage of those situations in a short, like 15 to 20 second period, because it's huge. And you'll, rather than like rambling on for minutes at a time trying to explain the context, it gives you a quick, concise way to describe it. The other thing, which Jeff kind of alluded to, is if your interview has questions about your answer, they'll ask you a follow-up question. So if you launch right into something and say, well, when I was a company commander in RC East, and you keep telling the story, and they go, what the hell is RC East? They'll stop and they'll ask you for clarification. So even if you kind of get ahead of yourself and skip over that, it's a conversation. It's a two-way thing. So I'm quite confident that if they had a question like that, they would stop and ask you for clarification.
Yeah, and I'll mention as well, practice. That's exactly what you have to do to efficiently explain your story. And don't tell your story to other military people who know all the acronyms that you're going to not even think about pausing to explain. Practice telling your story and that was one of the best things I did, was told my story and had people read my essays who were not in the military so that they could tell me what made sense to me that didn't make sense to them. And in the end, what you're conveying is a set of skills that are universal. You're not selling your specific military technical knowledge. The skills that you have are universal, and so practice explaining that in clear terms.
Does the Veterans Club host any professional recruiting events? So we briefly mentioned this before when we talked about the alumni network, but do you guys do anything professional recruiting events aside from companies reaching out to you?
So the Veterans Club specifically doesn't host recruiting events. We do the Veterans Network, as well as the MIT Sloan Alumni Network, is very strong. So more likely what would happen if you needed to get in somewhere specific is you'd rely on the network, and that's been very powerful.
Yeah, and I guess there's a bit of a subtle difference between recruiting and networking, depending on your perspective and who you're talking to. But we, like the Sloan vets have done beer calls with some reps with companies. We went to a joint event hosted by Harvard Business School down at the river, and that was their vets association. And again, that was more of a networking type event. I mean, nobody was passing resumes back and forth, but in terms of the networking type events, there are absolutely opportunities for that specific type of professional interaction.
Yeah, so Harvard kind of has the scale and the size where they hold specific veterans events. Quite honestly, our class size just isn't that big. I mean, we are half of what Harvard is, so we don't hold events to that scale. But what we do is specific companies will come through and say, hey, we're interested in just pursuing your veterans. So like a vet from Morgan Stanley or a vet from LEK Consulting or McKinsey or whatever will come, and like all of us who are interested in that company will get in a room, and it becomes half of a shoot the shit and half of a recruiting thing, where it's you sit down with him and you're getting a very blunt description of what he does, and very open to answer questions, far more so in a far more informal setting than all the other recruiting events that I've been to. And then just touching on Sam's point, so I kind of had a weird experience today. I sat down with a guy from LEK Consulting in a coffee chat with one other girl from my class, and we just got talking. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm from a non-traditional background. I was in the military." So I was like, "Hey, what branch?" He's like, "Navy." I was like, "Oh yeah, I was a Navy submariner." He's like, "No kidding, what ship?" I said, USS Louisville out of Pearl Harbor. He's like, "When?" So it turns out that he had left the ship about a year before I got there, and that he was in exactly the same positions on the ship that I had been. So we were kind of like, all right, well, we need to come back to this. So we kept like kind of a formal conversation for the next 10 or 15 minutes until our actual time was up. Then afterward, took his card, and I said, "Hey, let's get a beer." And he was like, "Absolutely." So, I mean, the network continues to build well outside of the formal recruiting channels in that sense. And he was a Sloanie, so just kind of ironic that he was here. I had no idea.
Great. Another question. How easy was the process to initiate using the post 9/11 GI Bill?
I can answer that. I'm not sure, Brian, if you're 100% eligible for aviation. I am, since we have to be in longer.
Yeah.
The process itself, really, in retrospect, wasn't that hard. The hardest part was finding information on what you're supposed to do. So in the end, there's really only a handful of forms you have to file. I believe you can do it online through eBenefits. There's ways to connect through it, and I was in the Marine Corps, so I don't know if the portal is different for the different services. But I was able to file online and then follow up with the veterans people in the recruiting office that handle Yellow Ribbon program applications and certifying GI Bill benefits. Keep in touch with them. What you're going to find is you're going to submit stuff. Because I didn't know when anything happened, I submitted everything early, and then it'll be a few months. Things are happening. You'll hear that your stuff has been certified, that you got the Yellow Ribbon program, benefits, all that kind of stuff. So it wasn't hard. It was just a lot of unknowns at the time. But you can find all the information online, as well as talking to any of us more specifically.
Yeah, and the Yellow Ribbon has been beefed up in the last year. So when I originally accepted the offer, it was at $7,500, and then immediately after I accepted, it was bumped to $10,000. So now from the GI Bill itself, you're getting a little over 20. It's like 20,500 something, and then another 10 from MIT and 10 from the veterans portion of the Yellow Ribbon. And yeah, I'll just back up, Kellen. It's a pretty easy process.
And then I would weigh in on that too. I'm actually not doing the post 9/11 GI Bill, but I will say that the MIT and Sloan side of the financial assistance, at least in my experience, has been incredibly easy. Basically, once I got here and passed the information out, like, hey, here's who you need to bill in the United States Army, and who's here, this is who receives it. Like, I haven't heard anything about that. And last time I sent a courtesy email to check on it, it was kind of, oh no, we got it, don't worry about it. So maybe a bit of upfront sweat equity, as it were, to get the process going. But at least on the Sloan and MIT side of things, it's been phenomenal from my financial aid experience. GI Bill specific.
Great. And if you guys have specifics, you can always email us, and we can put you in touch with the Student Financial Services Office too. Josh DeMayo, he's a solid guy, and he gets back to you quickly. So another question, I have a background in liberal arts, and I was interested in taking a few quant classes to supplement my undergraduate transcript. Do you suggest taking both calculus and statistics? Does admissions prefer business calculus or statistics? So I'll just quickly answer that, and then if you guys want to jump in. We want to just make sure that you can handle the coursework at MIT Sloan. So we look at a variety of things. Yes, your quant ability and your test scores, whether it's the GMAT or the GRE. Do you guys, so yes, and in your application we ask to see, if you have a grade for calculus or if you have a grade for economics. We do ask you to call those out. Do you guys have any suggestions for people, though, because you're taking the classes now, that you would suggest that they do prep?
Yeah, I would love to answer this question, because I was very nervous about this coming in. I did my undergrad at West Point. It has a STEM-heavy core curriculum, obviously, but it's been years since I did anything related. So I was very nervous about that. I was also a foreign language major in undergrad. So I think that a lot of people who fall into liberal arts background might get scared off by Sloan's quant-heavy curriculum and kind of MIT's aura as like a bunch of engineering nerds running around. I would say that you really don't need to worry about it that much. I came the week before orientation and did some pre-term courses. So they offer courses, there's like a math refresher, an econ refresher, and a financial accounting refresher. And I did all three of them. And you know, I've never taken an accounting course in my life. So I wasn't refreshing accounting, I was learning accounting. I'm doing great in that course right now. So it absolutely lays the groundwork. Sloan provides resources that set you up for success in that way, and it's not something you need to be nervous about. Like, would it be helpful to like bust out your old calculus textbook and remember how to like take the first derivative or something? Absolutely. But I think also that's the most calculus we've done this semester, at least in the classes, the core class I'm taking. I'm not sure if either of the track electives or other electives have more calculus, but it's really not too bad. And I wouldn't be scared off or think that because you don't have a quant background, you wouldn't be good.
Great. We'll just keep going with the questions just because we're getting close on time. But one of them, during the interview process, how much did post-MBA plans come up? And how did you come up with post-MBA plans, given that most of you have no business background? So just from, I'm an interviewer, in the process, sometimes I'll ask people what they're thinking they want to do in the future after they graduate from Sloan or what they want to do at Sloan. But it's not a focal point of the interview. So we just ask what you're thinking. That's pretty much it. Maybe at the end of the interview, might ask it, might not. You guys, how did you figure out what you want to do, given that you don't have a business background?
Yeah, so especially at this point in the application cycle, I would not worry about what you want to do, especially with regards to the Sloan application. I mean, the school is very hands-off in terms of you having a 10-year plan. As to me generating what I wanted to do, so this was actually a lot easier than I thought. There are a lot of industry talks that happen at lunch. So a recruiter will come in, an alumni will come in. The CEO of Burger King was here a couple weeks ago, just talking about their industry and their company and whatever. And a lot of it is just general interest stuff. So Sam, who's not even looking for a job, goes to these events, and I really think he's in it for the free lunch because there's free lunch for all of it. But but it also kind of is just out of academic interest. So I mean, today I spoke with Anheuser-Busch InBev. The day before that was a small boutique consulting company out of Boston. All the big consulting firms come through: Bain, BCG, McKinsey, whatever. So really what I tried to do is I joined, I think, 8 clubs right off the bat, and I said, all right, my grades are going to suffer purposely because I am dedicating my time to figuring out where I want to spend the rest of my life, what industry I want to go to. And I just started exploring. I went to all these different club events and all the industry events and had some really long days where it was, hey, you're in class till 5, and then you've got an event 5 to 7:30 with this one club, and then a beer call 7:30 to 9:30 with this other industry. And you just kind of hop around and meet people and get ideas and figure out what you want to do. So for me, that has like comfortably put me toward consulting. But I mean, I'm still only 2 months into the process. So although I'm going to recruit for consulting, I still have a lot of time to essentially jump off that ship, no Navy pun intended, and look for something else.
Okay. What do you consider a weakness of the Sloan program?
That's a tough one.
Actually, can I take another one? You guys think about that. Think about that,
Yeah.
and I'm going to answer the admissions one, all right? In the second admissions essay, you've asked us to write a professional letter of recommendation on behalf of yourself. What does the admissions committee hope to find in this essay that is not offered from the recommender? The admissions committee, so every year we change the essays. It'd be really boring to read 5,000 applications with the same essay every year. This year we decided to do the application, the recommender question, because it's common in industry for people to give 360 evaluations. We want to know what you think of yourself and how you fared in your role, and compare that to what your recommender says as well. You'll have a different perspective, obviously, than they will in some regard. There'll be some similarities, there'll be some overlap, but we're hoping to get some other differences and different insight as well. There's no really right or wrong answer, though. So now back to what you change about Sloan, or what you consider a weakness of Sloan.
For me, I'm going to have to defer. I actually have no idea. So far, I'm, 3-4 months into the program, and I'm completely happy with it, and I'm looking forward to picking all my own classes next semester, so I don't have anything to offer on that.
So I'll offer something up here, and take it or leave it, but the track programs are still relatively new and are developing, and a lot of changes are being made each year to each program. So I'm in the EM track right now, and I'm not going to lie, I'm not in love with it. I joined it because it has this lab right off the bat, which in theory sounds wonderful, and I'm learning a lot from it, but it's not necessarily because of the class. It's because of the interactions that I'm having with my team, having with the client, whatever, and I feel like there was a lot of wasted time in that class that could have been better spent. But I'm also giving that feedback directly to the TAs and the professor, and they were making on-the-spot adjustments to the syllabus based off of how my classmates are reacting and our schedules and everything along that sense. So the track programs are building, and I think there's a lot of value in them, but I'd say it's probably one of the weaker portions of Sloan, if I had to identify a weakness.
And with that, like, we're very transparent at Sloan in the admissions process and everything, and when there are problems or when people aren't happy with something, there's this Dean's Advisory Committee. They meet with the Dean monthly. The students' voices are heard and changes can be made very quickly, and it's great to hear that too, about your experience. But with the tracks too, let me say this: you do not have to take a track. You can drop a track if you sign up for a track. Most of the class, less than half the class graduates with a track. And if you aren't in a track, the majority, 99% of the classes that aren't in the track, you can take if you're not part of the track, if that makes sense. So even if you're not signed up in a track, you can take most of the classes offered. And then we never mentioned the cross-registration. There's a lot of jointly listed classes between all of MIT, and then you can take up to 3 classes outside of Sloan at any of the other graduate schools or at any of the Harvard graduate schools as well. So it's a great way to sort of bolster your curriculum there as well, meeting people from across campus. And I think that's one of the biggest differentiators of MIT, is that we are, the School of Management at MIT, but you can have all the resources of the greater institute, and that we really do. A lot of students will take advantage of that, whether it's classes, clubs, organizations, the Entrepreneurship Center, the Media Lab, all these cool things that are going on main campus that really are ingrained in the culture at Sloan as well. So another question. Oh, I'm sorry. One other, what you change about Sloan, or whatever the question was.
Yeah, I've struggled with that too. I've talked to a couple other applicants, and the only thing I can come up with is kind of like information management, which being in the military, I'm sure you guys are all used to getting like 6 million emails a day. And it's a little bit of that is self-imposed. Brian mentioned signing up for like 9 clubs. I think I signed up for like 14. So I'm getting that much more email, and then you get emails from the institute at large, from organizations you've offered to help out, and there's just a tremendous amount of information coming in. And it's a little bit frustrating, and I know that it's something that people are aware of and it's been discussed. I think it's a hot topic in the Sloan Senate right now, but I would call that a weakness. In the grand scheme, like I said, not much of a weakness.
A lot of people, so just from working here for a while, things you hear, the biggest one I'd say is like just information overload, like you mentioned, as well as the one complaint you hear, not enough team rooms. We want more team meeting rooms. One of our buildings is offline now. It's being completely gutted and rebuilt, so that's taken up some space, so there's a little less space on campus, in the Sloan buildings, but people just don't like to leave the Sloan buildings and don't want to walk next door to the library or something. So that's one thing I usually hear. Was that, but then there's the new building E62 as well. So, quick last question. I'm coming to Cambridge for an interview on Monday the 10th. Is someone from the Veterans Club available on Sunday afternoon or Monday evening, or even Monday morning, Sunday afternoon or evening, Monday morning, to get together for talk about your experience at Sloan?
Yeah, Michael, I actually, a bunch of us are going out to dinner Sunday night. If you want to join us, we would love to have you, and we can you can pick our brains about some last minute interview stuff, or just kind of be a fly on the wall and watch some Sloan people interact with their spouses and whatnot. So again, I can give you my contact info, and we can set that up.
Yeah, Michael, definitely more than willing to meet up. Pat O'Brien, one of the club's presidents, had sent out an email this week where people were signing up to essentially meet and greet with the vets that were coming in for interviews. So if no one's reached out to you yet, I'll definitely make sure someone reaches out to you specifically to meet up on Monday before your interview, so you can kind of get some one-on-one and get a feel if you're not going to come out to dinner on Sunday.
Great. Do you want to just give is there a general email address you want to give so we can get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you mine. Mine is bdwkirk@mit.edu. So it's Bravo Delta Whiskey Kilo India Romeo Kilo @mit.edu. If any of you guys have any questions that either we did not answer fully, or if you want to try to meet up, or if you really just didn't agree with anything we said and want to send a nastygram out, please feel free to reach out.
Great. And also my email address again, jcarbone, JCARBONE @mit.edu. If you have more questions, admissions related, or just want to get in touch with any other types of people as well. But with that, great, Sam, absolutely. With that,
I don't know
thanks.
if you got Brian's or not, but if not, stick around. Let's get Jeff again.
Yeah, so yeah, thanks a lot for joining. We're pretty much done now, and thanks for all the great questions, and thanks guys for helping out tonight. Better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming, guys. Good talking.